Wow, absolutely mind-blowing. In 2019, the Porsche Taycan was announced, and it took many by surprise, be it for those Porsche enthusiasts who had seen the manufacturer's first all-electric vehicle, or indeed those EV enthusiasts, because this was the first car that could really challenge the Tesla Model S's reign. Now, the vehicle itself starts from around £70,000, and here we've got the Turbo. This vehicle starts from £115,000, and I should mention that is without options. The model we've got over here costs a whopping £148,000. Yes, that's right, over £30,000 of options. Now, if you'd like a detailed breakdown between the trim levels, for example, the Taycan 4S and the Turbo and the Turbo S, do check out our written review. It will be down in the description below. And furthermore, if you do want to see more from the channel, definitely do subscribe and hit that bell notification. So to kick things off, we're going to talk about its exterior design. And here I think the Porsche Taycan is one of the best looking vehicles on the market. Be it for Porsche fans out there who want that familiar look, or new EV owners looking to get a very stylish vehicle, this is a car that I think many will agree they'd love to see on their drive. Now, it all starts off with the front of the vehicle, where the headlights are kind of indented into the side of the vehicle. The wheel arches from the side are kind of flared up, and then at the side profile you're treated with this sporty design, and that's thanks to also the likes of the 19, 20 or 21 inch rims that you get depending on the Taycan that you go for. At the rear of the vehicle, it's still very stylish. It's got a really nice tail light, and even the diffuser at the back just looks, well, extremely stylish. Truthfully, the car itself just oozes quality, but it's not just all for style. There's a reason why Porsche have designed the car in such a way. Take, for example, the door handles. They're built into the frame of the vehicle, and while this might seem quite simple to some people, it's actually to improve the aerodynamic efficiency and bring down that drag coefficient. So much so that Porsche have brought it down to 0.22 CD. Now, all of that aerodynamic efficiency would be rather pointless if the car didn't have that driver's feel. But thankfully, the Porsche Taycan does exactly that. And in fact, it's probably one of the best EVs I've driven to date, which, well, effectively gives you the best driver's feel that, well, a manufacturer can offer. See, Porsche's pedigree does come from motorsport, and it feels like it's been translated in the Taycan, specifically the Turbo, which is on review over here. Now, there is a variety of different factors as well that constitute to me making such a statement. The car has a dual motor setup, one at the front and one at the rear axle, and combined these will give you 500 kilowatts of power. That equates to 670 horsepower, although I should note that is only applicable when you're launching the car from a standstill to 60 miles an hour. If, however, you are driving it in regular conditions like we are doing now, and no matter which driving mode you're in, you're going to be limited, quote unquote, to 616 horsepower, which is around 460 kilowatts of power. That's still a lot of power at your disposal, and you've got 850 Newton meters of torque to play around with, which means it will leave you a little bit like this. Wow. Wow. That is incredible. Indeed, that's how much fun I had when I was launching the car, and better still, because of its 800 volt technology, means that I can consistently launch the car and not have to worry about the batteries cooling down. Now, in my tests, which were done in wet conditions, the car got to 60 miles an hour from a standstill in 3.13 seconds, which quite frankly is absolutely ridiculous. I'm sure you can get this into sub 3-second territory if you're running it on drier conditions, and of course your tires will be affected and the road itself, but it's still ridiculously fun. Now, what about its handling? Well, if you're at a junction like this, you can put your foot down and have an absolute blast. Now the car does have a four-wheel drive system, and despite that fact, those type of things on four-wheel drive, traditional four-wheel drive system vehicles isn't just quite possible. And that's yet again because Porsche has tailored this vehicle to its customers and wants to still incite a little bit of fun when you're driving an EV. So while it does have that control when you're going around corners, it still can drop its back end a little bit and give you, well, a bit of that oversteer that a lot of drivers absolutely crave, specifically if you're coming from an ICE based vehicle. Now, as we're approaching a 30-mile-an-hour zone over here, I should mention its top speed, which is a little bit ironic, don't you think? Its top speed is limited to 161 miles an hour. So therefore, you German viewers out there, or those people who are going to be taking this around a race circuit, such as, let's say, Porsche's Leipzig circuit, which I got to go around in 2017 and had a lot of fun doing so, driving a variety of different Porsche vehicles, means that, well, you are not going to be restricted, and effectively means that at 161 miles an hour you can be getting from point A to point B very, very fast, even if that means a new lap time. Now, all that speed does mean that you'll want to bring the car to an abrupt halt sometimes, if you're going to be cornering, for example, or for example if you have to apply the brakes in a case of emergency. And thankfully, despite having all that power and that prowess, the Porsche Taycan has 6-piston brakes at the front and 4-piston brakes at the rear, which means it's really responsive and can come to a halt really quickly. Now, on the subject of bringing the car to a halt, I should mention regenerative braking, and here Porsche has decided to leave it at 0.39 Gs, which isn't enough for you to have a true one-pedal driving approach. Indeed, I think the manufacturer has done this because of its customers coming from ICE vehicles, where you have a sort of engine brake rather than, well, a system that's going to be recouping energy back into its battery pack. So as a result, it doesn't allow you to have a one-pedal driving approach, but on the flip side gives you a quite likened experience to, well, other Porsche vehicles out there on the market. One might have liked potentially the option to add more regenerative braking for those people who do want to take it around, let's say, city commutes or slower drives. Allows for, well, just a little bit of a more comfortable experience. Now, on that note, if you're going to be taking a pretty expensive car on your daily commute, or indeed just going around cities, or let's say harsher terrain with a lot of potholes and speed bumps, well, fear not. This car has got a fantastic adaptive air suspension, and indeed here, when the car is lifted up a little bit, it eats up the road and almost makes you forget that you're driving a high-performance sports car. I would say almost that it feels sometimes that you're driving, well, a regular saloon or hatchback, which is somewhat surprising and arguably something that is potentially one of its biggest selling points, because despite it being a high-performance car and one that can handle corners and have very little body roll when needed, it can also be that car which is quite leisurely and gives you a nice driving feel when the road and the terrain around you isn't that forgiving. Now, on that note, I should also mention in-cabin insulation, where the Porsche Taycan is absolutely fantastic. Now, we do have the 1,301 pound option, which further improves the cabin insulation and also gives you the rear privacy glass. But what you'll find is, if you do go for this option, you'll be treated with a serene interior, among one of the best in the world, be it for an EV or not. Now, if you tailor this as well with the fact that you do have this fake sort of whooshing sound that you will be able to enable or disable via the infotainment screen, well, it allows you to kind of enjoy the drive all that little bit more. And while I wasn't a fan of reading about how this in-cabin sort of artificial sound does, it actually doesn't sound too bad, and I'm actually pretty impressed by its inclusion. Here's how it sounds. Now, while it's been all very positive so far and very much impressive, the thing that lets it down, and where Tesla fanboys, shall we say, will come in and say, well, wait a second, how about electric range? And this is where I found the Porsche Taycan fall short. See, the manufacturer claims that you'll get from 250 to 280 miles, but if you were to launch it and drive it as you would of a normal Porsche vehicle, you'll be expecting under 190 miles, which might suffice for a lot of individuals, but equally for some people out there might mean that, well, they can't go for that long drive and have the Porsche Taycan take them there and back, which is potentially a major disadvantage for previous Porsche customers or for those people who want a high performance EV that can also go the distance. And in this respect, the Tesla Model S and the Tesla Model 3 even reign supreme. Now thankfully the Porsche Taycan can be rapidly recharged, and that's because it takes a 270 kilowatt input. Here you'll go from 5 to 80% in 22.5 minutes. Shift that to a 50 kilowatt input, which you might be more commonly finding on the motorway, and it will take 93 minutes to reach 80%. Now, if you do not have a fast charger, or for example you're using a home charger or workplace charger and you have a 3-phase charger unit, its Type 2 port will take you from 0 to 100% in roughly 9 hours. Pop that on a slower 7 kilowatt charger and it will take over 11 hours. And we're not even going into the fact of what happens if you plug this into a regular 3-pin socket. Well, expect it to be a ridiculously long time. Now, where it really stands out in comparison to other vehicles, specifically the Tesla, at least in my opinion, is in terms of its interior design. It absolutely oozes quality. No matter where you look, be it from the overall upholstery, which can be leather-free or leather, depending on your preference, and in terms of the actual design of the cabin, in my opinion, it's one of the best looking cabins in an EV, or even in most modern electric or non-electric vehicles that you can find out there on the market. Now, for me, the biggest thing that stands out, and it might be kind of obvious as soon as you sit inside the driver's seat, is its 16.8-inch instrument cluster. Not only is it quite large, but it's elongated and slightly curved. This actually gives you a perfect experience when you're holding the steering wheel. You can see all the information. It doesn't seem to be lost. And furthermore, the brightness of the display is very vivid and very bright indeed, and can get dim in lower light conditions, and gives you all the key information that you need. You can even tailor it to your preference, where you can even display, for example, the amount of G's that you're outputting. Now, in front of the instrument cluster, you've got a steering wheel which is really designed, again, from kind of the racing background that Porsche has. It's got a quite nimble feel, and it's not too thick, not too large, neither is it too small or kind of quirky looking like some of its competitors. In my opinion, it's just the perfect design. However, the same couldn't be quite said about its button configuration, where here the manufacturer has really kept things to a minimum. And I'm not really sure why, and the fact that you can't really fully customize all the buttons means that you're going to be left without certain basic functions. Take, for example, if you want to go previous or next on a track, you're going to have to sacrifice the special button that you can customize here, and here you can only go back a track, you can't go forwards, which just seems, well, just very primitive. Instead, you're going to have to play around with the infotainment system. Speaking of which, the 10.9-inch infotainment system comes as standard, and while it's a little bit of an arm's reach for most people, specifically given the fact that it's not angled towards the driver, the design and the layout, and furthermore the brightness of it is perfectly fine, and I have no complaints when it comes to navigation. If you want to spruce things up, and specifically for your passenger, you can add a 10.9-inch infotainment system for your passenger, thereby having two 10.9-inch displays sitting side by side. Now, on the subject of entertainment, here you have got Apple CarPlay that's built in. However, the same couldn't be said about Android Auto, which is completely omitted. Therefore, if you want to connect up to the infotainment system and you're an Android user, you're going to have to rely on Bluetooth only. And here the SBC and AAC codecs are supported. Now, why will this be of relevance? Well, if you want to listen to your own tracks, you'll want to do so via Bluetooth. Now here you have got the Bose sound system that comes as standard, or in the variant that we've got, it's got the Burmester sound system. Now if you want to hear how it sounds and also get my subjective opinion on the matter, do check it up on your pop-up banner. What I'll say in a nutshell is that it sounds okay, but I was actually expecting a little bit more from such a premium system. Now if you are an Apple user, you can connect over to the infotainment system via the two Type-C ports. So here, yes, you will need a Type-C to Lightning adapter or a cable, and therefore you can then plug in your smartphone. There's also a little handy smartphone place in the center armrest. Now beside the Type-C ports, you've then got a 12-volt cigarette lighter, and here it allows you to, let's say, plug in a dash cam. If you want a favorite list of ours, do check it up in the description below, where you can see some of the dash cams no matter your budget. Now there are further two Type-C ports found at the rear of the cabin, and these are found just in front of the rear middle seat, or let's say the compartment storage. Now here this is only used for charging only, but will suffice for the rear occupants. Now at the back you'll also see a 5.9-inch display, and this is for the climate controls for the rear occupants if the driver or indeed the front passenger has enabled it for the people who are sitting at the back. As for the front of the cabin, you've then also got a 8.4-inch display which is used for your climate controls. This can also be expanded for you to interact with the infotainment system. So while it is a bit of an arm's reach, and if you might not have longer arms, what you'll find is that the small little touchpad almost found at the bottom of this screen allows you to interact with the infotainment system. Now despite all this tech, I would have actually quite liked physical buttons and knobs, and I know it's a modern vehicle, but still it's not as intuitive to use in comparison to the physical buttons found on, let's say, older Porsche vehicles. Now just below the 8.4-inch display, what you'll find is two cup holders, and I did reference the center armrest. Little point on the center armrest, it doesn't stay up and propped up, instead it keeps falling down, which I just felt was just a little bit unnecessary. Now the door bins, at least at the front, are large enough for a 500ml bottle, and you can fit, let's say, a wallet or a large size purse. The same could be said about the glove compartment. There are some rear door bins as well, but they're slightly smaller. Now elsewhere you do have the center armrest for rear occupants that can be brought down, and here you'll find two further cup holders, and there's even a little storage place for you to place, let's say, some valuables. And as it's got a non-slip material, means that, let's say, phones won't be flailing about when you're going very fast on the motorway. Now in terms of storage, of course, you have got the boot, and here it can be electronically opened, be it via the key fob, via the infotainment system, or indeed the 8.4-inch display, and also via physical button that's very conveniently located. It's also got an electronic button that can close it as well. Now in terms of capacity, you've got 366 litres, and this further extends when you pop down the seats. So yes, you can pop down the rear seats, at least in the model that we've got, and therefore you can take some elongated goods. You can also get a ski latch if you so wish as well as an option. Now there is also front storage space, in other words frunk space, and here you've got a further 81 litres of space, which is quite a lot considering most EVs don't even have 35 or 40 litres. So here you can place loads of goods if you want, and of course your charging cables. On the subject of the charging cables, you can place them in a bag, or if you want, if you're taking a singular cable, you can place it in the small underfloor compartment found at the rear boot, which I find very convenient. Now on the subject of practicality, the vehicle will seat up to 4 occupants. If I'm not mistaken, you can get a 5th occupant as well, sacrificing some of the functionalities of the rear middle seat. So therefore the armrest, or let's say the little storage bay that I talked about before. Now the seats themselves are all really comfortable. I have no issues whatsoever, be it at going at speed from the kind of bucket type seats, or indeed if you're going on longer distance motorway commutes and you just want a soft experience, then you're not going to have a problem. In the model we have, the front seats are also electronically adjustable and heated too. Now for the rear seats, They are slightly positioned in a diagonal format because of how the battery configuration is. The same could be said about some of its competitors. And here your knees will sit up just a little bit higher than your pelvis, and therefore for longer distance drives you might find that your quad or hamstring muscles might get a little bit tired, specifically if you're someone like myself who has longer legs. You can extend them to a certain degree, but it's not that much. For a sports vehicle, it's to be accepted. If it was a family-sized vehicle, for example the Cross Turismo, then you might expect a little bit more leg room. Now, as for headroom, the rear occupants will be okay if they're just under 6'1" or 6'2". Anything above that, and when they're reclined, they'll be touching the rear top segment of the vehicle. The same couldn't be said, however, at the front, where I think if you were even 6'7", you can fit in comfortably, specifically given the driving position, and the height can be pretty much adjusted to your heart's content. I don't think you'll have a problem at the front. Now back into the hot seats, and let's talk about safety. Now here it scored 5 out of 5 stars in Euro NCAP's pretty rigorous tests, and therefore means the vehicle is extremely safe if you're going to be in a serious accident. I was actually particularly impressed when it was hit by the side from a pillar and the car barely even moved, which was pretty much impressive. Now, for those people who are not going to be in a serious accident, and I pray that no one will be in a serious accident, be it with this car or any vehicle in the world, you will want to know about its driver assistance systems. Now here they're pretty basic. You've got cruise control and lane keep assistance that come as standard, but the rest of the stuff are basically an option. It's pretty much a recurring theme over here with Porsche's philosophy. If you want it, it's there, but you're going to have to pay for it. And here you've got a fantastic inclusion of options, and all of those that are included in this vehicle, such as adaptive cruise control, the lane departure warning, the blind spot assist, are all absolutely excellent. I also really like the 360-degree cameras when it comes to parking, because the car's visibility from the rear of the vehicle is very limited, so therefore you're going to want to resort to the rear view camera. And if you have the inclusion of the side view cameras as well, it means that you can have a bit more peace of mind for not curbing your wheels, and indeed not damaging your vehicle if you're doing a tight parking maneuver. And so this all leads me on to my verdict. What do I make about the Porsche Taycan, specifically the Turbo that we've got on review over here? Well, it's easy to say that it's one of the best looking vehicles out there on the market. I know that's quite subjective, but in terms of its interior design, it's very familiar and yet just oozes quality. Now fundamentally, the reason why you'd be buying a Porsche Taycan over any of its rivals, or even any car out there on the market, is due to its handling performance and genuinely its raw performance that you get from its dual motors. And here I think the Porsche Taycan, at least at the time making this review, is pretty much unrivaled. But there is one catch, and that's its electric range, something I did talk about in this review. And in terms of the overall efficiency that you get, it can't quite compete with the Tesla Model 3, let alone the Tesla Model S, which does kind of perform pound to pound with this vehicle. If, however, that is not up on your priority list and you want a car that's really fun to drive, then it's the Taycan. I can't really see why anyone would argue with that. And as a result, it gets our Performance Award. Now, do let us know in the comments below what you make of the vehicle, and indeed if it's a vehicle that you'd like to see yourself owning, be it if you can afford it or not. And of course, if you like this review, give it a like, subscribe and hit that bell notification to keep up with the latest EV reviews. And if you feel this video will be helpful to a family and friend making an informed purchasing decision, definitely do share it with them. Alright, I've been Chris from TotallyEV. Take care of yourselves and goodbye.